Greetings and salutations. It is I, Mr. Nothing, the museum curator of the weird and the strange and the host who might be a ghost. Welcome back to Around the Weird, a booktube channel where I talk about all the unusual and out of the ordinary literature that I found in my travels in the United States of America. And sometimes I talk about tags that I found on BookTube. Today, I want to talk about the presidential tag. I was tagged by Lucas over at The Bits of Lit. I will put a link to his channel in the description so that in case you are not a mutual follower of the both of us, you can find him and enjoy the videos he makes. He's currently in the process of talking about Walt Whitman, the Leaves of Grass book, and the Lord of the Rings series. Which I'm interested in hearing his take because I recently read it, and he always has a slightly different take from me whenever we talk about books. So I'm interested in seeing what he thinks about certain events in the sextilogy as it is. Go check him out. If I have to tag someone, I would say Liz Reads. If she's hasn't done this already, she's tagged. I will put a link in the description to her channel so that you can find her and check out all of her interesting videos that she makes. One thing that's interesting about her channel is that she recently talked about making a jar for TBRs. So basically books that you have that you want to read. And I think I want to co-opt that just because there's a lot of books that I want to read, and I often find myself, ignoring those and just going to the library and getting another book. And then my list just keeps growing longer and longer, and I never read, all the things I plan on reading. But, that's beside the point. Just go check out her channel. And without further ado, let's get to the questions. I will put the list of questions in the description as well, so that you may find them, and we can talk about, or you can talk about it on your channel if you so want to do it. You don't have to be tagged. You just have to want to have fun, So here we go. First one is George Washington. The first book that you remember reading all to yourself. Well, I don't exactly know the answer to that because, my memory, I've read a lot of books in my time, 28 years of books, maybe not exactly 28, but I can't think of the exact moment I started, reading by myself. I have to imagine it's one of those Golden Lion picture book things, that I don't know if they even make anymore. But I could also say probably The Magic School Bus, because I read those books pretty young, and that's what got me interested in reading, because I love learning about the digestive system and space and all those kind of things. So don't have an exact memory, but something maybe close to it. The next book is good old Thomas Jefferson. What is a book written by a bad person? Because Jefferson owned slaves and was kind of detestable at times. And so I would say one answer to that could be the Harry Potter series, specifically, Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, which is my favorite in this series. And it's written by J.K. Rowling, a very terrible person. She's a TERF, transphobic, and doesn't really seem to have a lot of good ideas going on lately. One of her recent books, she made one of the characters a transgender person, so she's spreading that fear around, and it's not really good. Another answer, though, could be The Reef and Wondrous Life of Oscar Wilde by Junot Diaz, which is a fascinating book, and I love it. But the issue is that Junot Diaz was Me Too'd recently for being verbally, maybe physically abusive towards women. And he that's bad enough, but when he was called out by it, he ended up releasing an article where he talked about how he was abused when he was younger, trying to garner sympathy and also hiding behind the shield of abuse to justify your own bad behavior, which I didn't like. So it's kind of hard to really get behind this, The Brief and Wondrous Life of Oscar Wilde, when the author is kind of a bad person. The next book is Teddy Roosevelt, or the next question is about Teddy Roosevelt. It's a book with more energy than me. I would say probably the Junie B. Jones series, which I read when I was younger. I really like the Junie B. Jones series because Junie B. Jones is an interesting character. She's very wacky and like high energy. ADHD comes to mind. She's very rude, and so like reading it is just like a thrill ride and kind of exhausting because Junie B. Jones has more energy, very manic, more so than I am. But one book that I read recently was Space Opera by Catherine M. Valente, and it's very zany and unusual, and it just maintains that level of hype and energy throughout the entire book, and it really drains you, and like at times it's more obnoxious. I enjoyed it, but it was definitely obnoxious. The next question is FDR, Franklin Roosevelt, a book that changed my perception of reading. Again, I talk about this a lot, but Holes by Louis Sachar was one of the books I read in elementary school that got me really interested in reading and wanting to read more, because I was like, wow, books can be great, books can be fun. I didn't know about this before. Let's start reading more, and that got me pretty much set on the path of reading. But one example that I maybe haven't talked about is East of Eden by John Steinbeck, a real quality book. And whereas Holes got me thinking that reading could be fun, East of Eden got me thinking that reading could be a transformative experience, where like I'm not the same person I was before I read East of Eden. It's such a deep and emotional and powerful book that I'm glad I read it, and it changed my mind, because now I'm seeking out more books like East of Eden. You know, you don't always find them. Luckily, you find like a stoner every now and then, but you got to do some serious work to find the books like East of Eden and Stoner. The next president is John F. Kennedy. The most glamorous It book I've ever read, either Harry Potter or the Hunger Games series. I don't really read a lot of new books, and I certainly don't know what the public is clamoring for. I guess the New York Times bestseller list might be an indication, but you can really game the New York Times bestsellers list, so there's no really telling if a book is popular or if an author is just, a publishing company is just buying a lot of those books and to up the numbers of how much are being sold. So, the only ones we know for certain are Harry Potter and the Hunger Games, which were really popular when they came out. So I would say, Harry Potter is very glamorous for the wizarding life it sets up. But Hunger Games, not so glamorous. But it is an It book. It kind of paints, a dystopia, which is definitely not it or in, as the youth would say. Very interesting. But I think those are the only two examples I have. I don't really seek out a lot of new unless it sparks my interest for some specific reason. The next president is Gerald Ford, one of the few presidents to have just a singular term, mainly because he pardoned Nixon and people did not enjoy that. A placeholder book that I read just to get me from one book to another. I don't really see a lot of examples of that. If I want to read a book, it's because I want to read it. I don't see reading a book as a way to get me from one point to another, unless there's a good reason for it. It's a very difficult question to understand. But I think maybe going back to high school, I took a class on novels. I've talked about this before, where our task was to read a certain number of books over the semester, and then talk about them with the teacher to show that we synthesized it and whatnot. And one of the books that, what path I took was the path of least resistance, where I only had to read 10 classics. Because I thought that would be easier and, I'd get done quicker. And I did get done quicker, but it was, 10 classics, thought-provoking books that aren't the easiest to read. And I think the book that was served really as a placeholder between what I had read and what I eventually wanted to read was Sink the Bismarck. by some author. I'll put the name here somewhere. I don't really remember a lot from the book besides the fact that it was like a naval warfare type fiction set in World War II. It wasn't very interesting. And it didn't leave an impact on me, and I never want to talk about it again. Yeah, it really feels like I just read it because I had to, and it got me, to the end point. I read a number of other books for the class, like Around the World in 80 Days, Oliver Twist, The Scarlet Pimpernel, and others that I felt had more of an impact on me, much more than Sink the Bismarck. Next president is William Clinton, good old Bill Clinton. A sinful reading experience for me. I got to go with what Lucas said on his channel, which is The Story of the Eye, which he made me read while I was living with him for a time. He says it's because it was a way of justifying my living there in lieu of rent. I say it's because he's sadistic and enjoys seeing me suffer, because that was a really hard one to read, especially because I hadn't read a lot of debaucherous books before. The only other example I have is 50 Shades of Grey, but that's nothing compared to The Story of the Eye. That gets really weird and really kind of violent and really kind of strange over the course of several pages. And it was really, for its time, it's very edgy. So it's just bizarre. And I guess it's a very sinful reading experience. Another example is fan fiction, which I read from time to time. I recently read a fan fiction that shipped Kirk and Spock in very unusual ways, and it was very sinful, but it made me laugh, which is always good about fan fiction. Is it goes for the laughs, even though it's also very, very dirty. The next one is George W. Bush, a harmful book that I read, and I got to go back to 50 Shades of Grey. I know a lot of people who've spoken out in the BDSM community and are like, this book is in no way representative of what BDSM is. So it's harmful in that way, that like people could think that it is and actually end up harming their partner in some sort of way. But it's also weird about relationships, because Christian Grey and the girl in the book, like, they have a very harmful, abusive kind of relationship that I'm sure extends over the course of the series and just becomes more toxic. For people like seeing this and being like, oh, I want what they have, that's not good. It's pretty. It's wrong for the reasons they don't want it to be wrong. They want it to be wrong because it's smutty and it's subversive. But those are fine. Like, they're not any dirtier than the other books that are in the romance genre. It's just, the publisher probably made a big hubbub about it just to draw hype or something. But it's mainly just harmful. And you shouldn't look to this book for guidance on anything, really. The Barack Obama question is next. What is the last good book that I read? Flaws and all. I guess going immediately back to last week or this week, Stoner by John Williams, a high quality book that made me feel a lot of emotions, that had great prose, that explored a lot of interesting themes, and painted a lot of fascinating characters that really felt like they just leapt off the page. I wouldn't say it had that many flaws. I guess I got to read it again before I can see those flaws and they become, a little bit more apparent. But I couldn't really complain anything about the book besides, not giving us enough about Stoner's past, and only providing, like the bare details of the past. But maybe his past isn't too important. And if going back even further, House of Leaves, and I can say that was pretty flawed. Like, I loved it, and it was a really good book, a great experiment, but it still had a number of flaws. That one of which is just like it seems like Danielewski treats his audience like they're stupid, because he goes out of his way to explain the themes, and it's like, oh, I could have latched onto those themes if you had let me tried, but instead, like, Danielewski just kind of spells it out for you, and it's one of the few weak points of the book, but the flaws are there, and I still like it. So a really good book, and worth checking out in case you haven't. This last one isn't a question, but I guess one that I'll pose out there. What is you could call it the Donald Trump question? What is a really bad book that you knew was going to be bad when you went into it? I feel like that's a good representative of Donald Trump. I don't really have an answer to that. I thought of the question, and then I realized, I don't really pick up books that I think are going to be bad on the outset. 50 Shades of Grey, again, I kind of knew it wasn't going to be any good, but I read it to impress a girl, as one tends to do. But you don't have to answer that question, or even bring it up at all. So just ignore that. Those are my thoughts on the presidential tag. I hope, if anything I said, caused you to think a little bit, or you want to comment on it, feel free to comment below. I would love to have a discussion with you, and talk about books, because books are cool. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so that other people can find out about the presidential tag, which should be a lot of fun. And don't forget to follow me on Twitter @AroundTheWeird, so we can talk about books and movies and chocolate pretzels and fun stuff like that. And until then, I wish you the best of luck in your weird and presidential travels. Farewell.